Glad to have you back, and you're still watching Plus Politics, and this time around we're shifting focus to outgoing governors as well as their projects. This time around we'll be looking at Imo State as well as Ogun State, and still in our Lagos studio we have Martin Slumber, a political affairs analyst. Thank you very much for staying back. Pleasure. And joining us now we also have Sam Adeleke as well, a political affairs analyst. I just have this funny smile on my face, but interestingly, starting off with Imo State now, for example, we have 4 new universities joined with the Imo State University known as IMSU, and that's the University of Science and Technology, the University of Creative Technology in Umana, we have the University of Medical Science, as well as the University of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences. One would say you can never have too many educational institutions in a country, but this time around this is coming with a different twist. Some say with current deficiencies with IMSU, why have 4 more?
The US has over 3,000 universities, polytechnics, and higher institutions of learning. But Nigeria has less than 500. And we have incidents of students not being able to get admission into universities across the country simply because of JAMB cutoff, and also the number, the ratio of people leaving school and the ratio to the university as the number of institutions is very low. Now, the governor has done something which most governors do when they are leaving. That is creating problems in court for their predecessors, or for their successors rather. Now, this is a government that has IMSU. IMSU barely pays salaries. Do you know that for every monthly salary paid by the governor in Imo State to the Imo State University staff, this was figures given by ASU of IMSU, they pay 60%. And the remaining 40% is gotten from loans from banks within Imo State. 68%. 68% rather. So you have a state that can barely, sustain the current institution that's on ground, and you are now creating more, and you do not even have a plan. Even though the NUC, in the course of inaugurating the institution, says that they have an academic plan, they have the EIA done, they will build the curriculum. But yes, while these are lofty ideals, are these financially viable and sustainable? These are the questions that the governor needs to answer, because everyone, ASU, the Education Rights Campaign, civil society organizations, they're like, guy, you can't just create problems for successors because you want to have it to your name that I was one that created 4 more universities, because apparently right now with these new creations, Imo State has the largest number of private
in the country
universities in the country.
Now, looking at the stance of the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU as well, condemning Rochas Okorocha's action, it says that this is a misadventure and a joke of the century. What do you make of their response here? Even acknowledging that NUC gave the go-ahead. Who is to blame?
I think that when people talk about the horse before the cart, it simply means that you do things properly. Apart from the orderliness, you also want to be sure about capacity. If Imo State does not have the capacity to, if you like, have additional university, why go ahead and flag off new universities? That, I want to believe, is the stance from the Academic Staff Union of Universities. But be that as it may, what is the reality? We need educational institutions that are qualitative, that are also effective, that can bring solution to, if you like, the challenges that Nigeria faces. Everywhere it is expected that a higher institution will contribute to development. But what we're seeing in Nigeria, I want to believe, is not satisfactory. To that extent, one questions the rationale for actually having more universities when the ones that are already here are not really contributing to development. Now, what are the challenges? Funding is part of it. Of course, even
pension remittances to the PFA.
Yeah, there are a number of things.
Going to as much as 3 years.
Yeah, that aside, I'm not being particular about Imo State University now. I'm just saying on a general note, some of the challenges also, you look at environment, space. Some of these private universities, for instance, to my mind, they are just a joke. Glorified secondary schools. So if we want to do these things, let us do them properly. Again, we must also know that private individuals, there's really nothing stopping them, from empowering higher institutions. By that I mean going out of their way, putting a lot of monies to support educational institutions.
Some would also argue that the state government cannot take an initiative and then instead of being the driver, you now wait to anticipate that private drivers
get the point. Sorry. Like for instance,
be convincing enough, then you would be able to have the private drivers.
I think that we have a general malice that is affecting the country.
And what's that?
By that I mean waste. I was at the University of Lagos, and I remember that the engineering department had all kinds of equipment, all kinds. They could fabricate machinery, they could do all kinds of things. As at the time I left that institution, I want to believe that if they had wanted, to produce a good number of the, if you like, machinery that we use in Nigeria, they could have done so. Then you ask yourself, why? All of those things are just there gathering dust. And you just wonder. It will appear that our academic arrangement is all about passing exams. And that is a big problem. It is not about passing exams. It is about being able
to build practical skills and contribute
and I
to the
think that
nation's
as a
development.
country, we need to take this issue very seriously.
Sam, quickly weighing on this matter now, we've had reactions as well from the National Coordinator of Education Rights Campaign, that's Hassan Soweto, and he also says that, well, this move is not coming as a surprise and is following in the line of individuals who just established these institutions as a means to siphon much more money. What do you make of this?
I know Azam Soweto, we finished together from OAU, and he has been very consistent with holding government accountable. And this is one of the many, poster situations whereby it is just the elephant in the room is just so obvious. Now, I remember some of the things that he also mentioned was that this is a man that is known for embarking on white elephant projects, like building the statues that costs millions of naira. Now, this is something that the next governor, that's Emeka Ihedioha, should take very seriously and look at the modalities for the execution of this. Now, to be honest, while we might have said that this guy, this governor, outgoing governor, did this in order to, create a white elephant project to probably siphon money, it's responsibility of the incoming governor to ensure that things are done properly.
Checks and balances. So when a problem, or so to speak, an obstacle is placed before you, you should create a way to make it a blessing to the state. You just touched on a matter that now carries us to Ogun State now, talking about continuity. And we've seen the
outgoing governor,
Ogun APC says that they are going to reverse all of the outgoing governor's last-minute appointment contracts as well as installation of traditional rulers. And then they said that this is just to frustrate the administration of Dapo Abiodun as well. But with all of this back and forth now, where we have even the governor-elect saying that he's not going to take responsibility for any of these projects, any of these appointments, and upon his arrival, things are going to take a different new turn. That we also saw with Seyi Makinde as well as Ajimobi now.
That's correct.
Are we taking cues from anybody? And what's with these outgoing governors and the governors-elect coming into power?
It's a big problem.
No more continuity, as we see.
When you say continuity, you only continue what you know that you really can't help. Whether you like it or not, you just have to follow this path. If a path is green, I'm sure many people will follow it rather than to go to a place that is lean. And that is why we talk about people leaving Nigeria going for greener pastures, if you understand what I mean. By and large, even if you look at Lagos, you saw what happened. Fashola left so many projects, if you like, inconclusive, even though the proper word will be uncompleted. Now look at what Ambode has left for us. Everywhere is littered with uncompleted, if you like, projects. And it's a big problem because everybody is pursuing an ego trip.
Why this rush?
And if you follow the ego trip, chances are it's going to lead you to a big fall, especially when your timing is wrong. Ambode was hoping that he would get a second term, but look at where he is now. So for Ogun State, I want to believe that for Ogun State and even for a few other states where all of these last-minute appointments are happening, the new governors will come in, weigh in on these things. If there is a transparent process, if these projects or installations or appointments make sense, they will hold on to them. If they don't make sense, they just jettison them. I think that's the proper thing to do.
Is it fair to have all of these quote-unquote unsustainable financial obligations ahead of a new governor, knowing that he or she coming into play has his own blueprint, and then you have this lump sum and you say, well, democracy is a continuum, so he or she must carry this weight as well with their own individual priorities and dreams for the state?
I looked at the modalities for the recruitment, and it was a legal recruitment. The staff of the public service, passed through the public service entrance examination conducted by the Administrative Staff College of Nigeria, ASCON. And so the people that passed, about 500 to 1,000 of them, were now engaged by the governor. So it was not just
their salaries have to be paid.
So these were not just a summarily, executed.
But you have the governor-elect here saying that he's not going to take responsibility for this.
Now, what the statement said that they may review. And when that time comes, Nigeria, we have a way of recovering from things or situations whereby you think that you fall off the hedge. Because these are people that will also protest and probably sue and take the government to court and say, we were not just appointed because the government liked our faces. We passed examinations, we went through the due process. So things that could really not generate so much furor is the appointment of the traditional elders and the elevation. Even the promotion of the government workers from GLS 16 to 17 were duly done, because these people were supposed to have been promoted last 2 years. So these things are things that the governor that is coming in will also be very careful to approach, because you don't want to offend those you are going to be working with at the moment. So it must be a thing of wisdom, because apparently this outgoing governor is fighting back at the party that's turned back on him, and the party is also fighting back at the governor that's turned back on him. So right now I believe that this is a leadership issue, that the national chairman of the party, the president, should weigh into these states that it appears things are falling apart. Take responsibility, call these people to order. It's about Nigeria, it's about sustenance, it's about continuity, it's about ensuring that, legacies, models, young people see these people as people that can really, teach the new generation how the Nigerian vision can be sustained.
All of these governors, the governors-elect this time around, will be objective in how they deal with these matters of their predecessors? It's just a few days to go. Some have also questioned, why make all of this noise? Get into power, then you can raise all of these flags and stop crying foul ahead of time. But do you think they would be objective now, coming into power, or their sentiments will overrule judgment?
They are not likely to be objective. In fact, they can't afford to be objective. Especially for those states where a different party is taking over the reins of power. And even for those states where, the same party is going to retain power, the reality is that certain overheads have cropped up. For instance, the minimum wage. So it's going to be a challenge to actually appropriate funds for some of these developments that are taking place last minute. And to that extent, I really don't see anything about objectiveness here. They are likely to bring in a lot of sentiments, and reality is also going to dawn on them, because if all of your funds are going to go, the way of recurrent expenditure, then you're not likely to do anything, capital, intensive, so to say. And to that extent, no governor wants that he has no legacy to show, in the time that he was at the helm. So, by and large, most of these things are going to be reversed.
Some would also say that we, as a country now, where we've gotten to, some interestingly say we have too many committees here and there, but what sort of structures should we put in place now, just like we do the first 100 days, the first 365 days of the president? Now we have governors-elect. To what extent now should we put checks or assessment and then hold these governors accountable? Irrespective of sentiment, which you are entitled to hold, what have you been able to do with the state resources in terms of what you met and what you're expected to do now? How do we build all of these structures?
This is a challenge to the new parties that emerged during this last election. Don't go to sleep. This is the time on a daily basis to question, to criticize constructively, to ask and engage, especially when you see decisions that are being made by these governors and these governments, that are not in favor with the people. Because we tend to only come out during elections to make noise and to agitate for the people. But starting from May 29, from May 30, start talking with facts and data, not just using very big words that will incite people to abuse. Let us start working with data as a country. Talk about the fact that the number of out-of-school children as at May 29, but by June 29, we have 30, 40 that are enrolling on a daily basis.
How do you do this when even our country as a whole has not yet done a population census?
Well, that is the work of, like I said, we have private organizations like Budget, like the MBS. We have people who, the World Bank, the IMF, they are funding to do some of these things. It is not so much about complaining that it cannot be done. Somebody has to do it.
Somebody has to do it. Now, we have 1 minute left to go. Now, gentlemen, quickly, this time around, do you anticipate that in the... I'm trying to play pundit here, and I'm also trying to put you all in the mix now. In the case where the governors elect don't necessarily deliver, do you think the blame game will come back once again and they'll point that that's why I cried foul then?
Of course, it has become the tradition. The blame game will always rear its head. Don't forget that, excuse me, most of these states are debt-ridden. You come into government and what you find is a lot of bills to pay. And even domestic debts are so humongous. So to that extent, most of these governors are going to express their own frustrations by blaming the government that they took over from.
Do you think we would have that too? And then to what extent does this affect our democracy going forward? Take responsibility for whatever you meet. My mom says, if you go to a washroom and you see messed up, make sure it is clean before you leave.
Governors at all levels, government officials, local government officials, councillors, legislators, senators, the president, please stop the blame game. Do something with what you have. Be creative. Many of our states are not viable. Many of them will spend the next 4 years paying salaries alone, employing people, employing aides, and letting the money circulate to those who are loyal. Please stop it. For the sake of God and for the sake of Nigerians, please think out of the box. Do
you just
something
said like
new.
A Nigerian now. For the sake of God. Thank you very much.
Because right now, every logic seems to sit on the head.
And we always have to resort to prayer. Well,
oh my goodness.
God help us all. God help Nigeria.
Amen.
Thank you very much for your time, Sam Adeleke. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. And Martha's Luba. Gentlemen, this is where we wrap up today's conversation. We'll take a look at our Plus Politics packages, and when we return, I'll definitely bring you my take. AC, please.
Amnesty International is calling for the unconditional release of persons, including children detained by the military and forcefully separated from their wives and families over suspicions of being members of the Boko Haram sect. The country director of Amnesty International Nigeria, Osai Ojigo, standing in solidarity, called for their release, saying government must ensure the women get justice.
This is the story of the Nifa women. Some of them are survivors of sexual violence. Some of them were beaten, were assaulted. Many of them know the price of hunger, starvation. Many of them saw their children, their loved ones die as a result of lack of food. We have been calling for justice. Justice for everyone that have suffered loss of family, of life, of property, of livelihood. And justice that those who have caused this pain and those who have brought this calamity upon us are also able to feel justice in their lives. We've been calling for an end for this insurgency, for an end for this injustice. And in the course of this, we discovered the enormity of how the insurgency and the fight to end the insurgency has affected family life. Women, children, fathers, brothers, uncles, aunts, grandmothers, grandfathers. The fabric of family life in our state, in Nigeria, is greatly affected by this insurgency. Families are no longer together. Families that do not know where their loved ones are, whether they are alive, whether they are dead. And even those that remained, those that survived, those that are alive, some of them suffered calamities that will remain with them for the rest of their lives.
I suffered very so much. I suffered, and I'm suffering now. So I want to tell to Nigerian government that should release our issues. Now about 9 to 8 years, I didn't see my son. I don't know why. So we have talents. Since that 8 years, we have talents, but nothing could happen. So we want our children, even though they are alive or not, we want to see our children. We want to let them bring out the list of all the detainees since from 2010 up to today.
Well, it's now time to bring you my take, and definitely there can never be a situation where we have too many educational institutions in a country or in a state. But making reference to the diverse reactions on the establishment of 4 new Imo universities, considering there are lots of inadequacies in Imo State University, IMSU currently, funding remains a concern, and beyond the establishment, the state government needs to heed to the calls from different bodies to ensure that the fate of IMSU is not replicated once again, especially as current realities still persist, from the late payment of salaries to irregular remittances to PFA, promotion arrears dating back as far as 2004. And for the situation in Ogun State, it is time to take cues from Oyo State, but for the outgoing governor and the governor-elect not biting beyond they can chew, but also be realistic in their approach and having regard for continuity to develop the individual states in all the country. I guess that's all we can say for now. I'm David Alabi, and it's been quite a pleasure having you tonight. The conversation continues same time, same place right here at Plus TV Africa tomorrow. Bye for now.